Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Employee to Boss podcast. I am your host, Hayleigh Hayhurst, the owner of Espresso Podcast Production, a full-service podcasting agency specializing in editing, marketing, and strategy. Today I am joined by an incredible guest, John Lee, the owner of PickFu. PickFu is a customer research platform for getting instant feedback from target audiences. Thousands of global brands rely on PickFu to help them make better data-driven decisions about their products and marketing. A little bit about John. He is passionate about building systems that help other people succeed. He has degrees in computer science from UC Berkeley and the University of Washington. John and his family live in the San Francisco area, where he shuttles his kids around in his dream car, a minivan. My conversation with John is very, very helpful for anyone in business who is really trying to understand a little bit more about the market research and feedback part of it. I think that a lot of entrepreneurs do try to do everything alone, and it is nice to have feedback from other people if you're not in like a business mastermind, or really you don't want to ask your friends and family a million questions about your business. Having a place that you can go to get feedback, like this consumer research platform, PickFu, is very, very helpful. And so we talk about how he started his business, the benefits of getting feedback through these consumer research groups, and really just all about entrepreneurship and making those decisions that will push your business forward. So before I publish this episode, I wanted to give PickFu a try to share my experience with you, and I loved it. I'm hosting a training that will live on my website. It's called Leveraging Podcasting for Business Expansion, the 3 steps you need to know. And I was stuck between this and a different title, and I decided, okay, let's try PickFu and see what people think, because I really didn't know which one to choose. I loved both of the titles. And so the reason I went with this one is because I ran an A/B test between a group of 15 people. And so I was able to select them to answer their name, age, gender, if they listen to podcasts, if they have a side hustle or a business. And so from there, they answered which title they liked better and why. They gave me those reasons why they liked a title better, which that was gold to me. I was able to see, okay, this group, this half likes this title because of this reason, and this group or this half likes this title because of this reason. And I liked that feedback, because I think when we try to do everything alone, it really we can get in our heads and really hold ourselves back. So now knowing that there is a platform like PickFu to help you decide between different logos, different titles, different descriptions, different whatever it may be, that is just so beneficial for business owners. So if you have any questions for either John or I, definitely let us know. All of his links will be in the show notes along with mine. Let's get right into this episode with John. Hey, John, thank you so much for joining me on the Employee to Boss podcast. I'm so excited to dive into today's topic.
Super excited to be here, Hayleigh.
You have such a cool product, and you really are helping businesses understand their markets more, their clients, all of that. So if you wanted to start off by telling us a little bit about you and your journey from employee to boss, I would love to learn more.
Okay. I guess starting at the end, I'm a co-founder of PickFu. It's like a digital focus group. We can talk more about that later. How I ended up here, I've been an entrepreneur for over 15 years now with myself and my co-founder, Justin. We started off as friends in college, and we actually went into the pure corporate route after college, going to big tech. So we were speaking a little bit before recording. I mentioned that I was in Seattle. That was because I moved to Seattle to work for Microsoft out of school. And so that was kind of the start of my career. Worked about 5 or 6 years there. Always had the entrepreneurial itch. My co-founder and I were always talking about different business ideas and so on. And so every couple of months, one of us would call the other, like, hey, what about this idea? And we talk about it, and we get really, really excited. And then nothing would happen, right? And then you fast forward some other months, and you come up with another idea. And we would never do anything about them. And this cycle repeated itself for a number of times. Part of the reason was is that we were remote. So he was actually in Chicago at the time and I was in Seattle. And then eventually we got to a point where we had all these ideas and we started seeing other startups launch with those ideas. And we thought, well, our ideas aren't that dumb where somebody else wouldn't actually go and pursue and try to build something about this. It's really just a matter of trying to give it a shot, right? And so over one long weekend, I believe it was like a Martin Luther King weekend, we got together and we were trying to do business plans, talk about the future, try to figure out what would it really look like if we just, cold turkey quit our jobs and tried making it in the world ourselves with our own business. And the very next day, we gave notice. And that was over 15 years ago. Along the way, it's been quite a journey. We always thought that, well, if it doesn't work out, we could go back and get a job, go apply for B school. That was a potential option. And I guess you could say we decided to choose like the school of hard knocks, and it's been quite a journey.
That's crazy that it was just one weekend, but it sounds like before that you had all these ideas, and it is scary to take that action, especially when you are in, Seattle is a very high paying tech city.
It takes a
So, when you decided to actually start doing it, what were some of the first things that you and your business partner did? I mean, right now, if you want to talk about your business where you do market research and focus groups, like you mentioned, is that how you really started this?
No, not at all. Not at all. We made all the mistakes along the way, right? If you read a lot of startup blogs or, business blogs, they say, it's not about you. It's not about your idea. It's about your customer or your target customer. And it's really about them, their problems, what you can do to solve their problems.
Mhm.
We knew none of that, maybe we had heard about that before, but we really knew none of that going in. And so we thought it was about us. We were so hyped up about our ideas. We thought we were so clever and building all these interesting things that for most, we've gone through a lot of different projects. Many of them have failed. I would say that most of the time, the number one reason that our projects, when they did fail, is that we didn't actually get to talk to our customers, or we didn't get to talk to our target audience, and we did not know what they want. So we're spending all this time over here building this thing that we're so high on ourselves on. We think we're so clever, but when you put it out in the world, if it's not solving a problem for your target customer, then you've got a problem, right? So initially we started out and we were just building. Our first project was building a restaurant menu aggregator website. Trying to solve back then, people would store takeout menus in their kitchen drawers. We were trying to digitize all of that stuff, and the it was fine. It did the way the business worked out was different from how we thought it would make money. We ended up making money through advertising instead of selling services to restaurants. But along the way, what one thing we did realize, one of the lessons we learned along the way is like, hey, you know, we were looking at each other and like, you're a developer, I'm a developer. We're both not designers. And yet we're arguing about these things like, what should the headline be? How should the website look? What kind of marketing collateral, what kind of message should we put out there? And we are not experts at any of this stuff. So, we were reading blogs and we thought, and it says, okay, well, talk to your friends and family, but they're super biased, right? And they get really, and eventually your friends and family, they love you so much, but eventually they get tired, giving feedback, and that they might be a little bit biased because they're related to you. And so the advice blogs that we were reading were like, okay, go talk to a bunch of strangers at a cafe. The point being that you need to get unbiased feedback on your problems, on your solutions, to really understand how people would react. Being introverted engineers, we didn't really want to talk to strangers. And so instead, we built a platform that gets unbiased feedback from random strangers on the internet. And that's how that tool became PickFu. And so for a long time, we put PickFu on the side. We used it for ourselves. We shared it with some people. It started spreading because it was solving a problem. And eventually that side project became the main project because we realized, well, this thing that we built is actually solving the problems of a lot of people. We should really focus on this and grow that. And we've been doing that ever since.
Yeah, and I've talked to entrepreneurs all day long in this space, and one of the biggest things that I hear them have to overcome, especially when they are working in corporate prior and then go and start their own business, is getting that feedback. In fact, I saw a post yesterday, literally yesterday, of this woman who built out this huge course and knows it's going to help people and is so excited. And she said, I have spent all my time building this. I have no followers. My only friends on Facebook are my family. I haven't spent time marketing.
Yeah.
How am I going to sell this? And I was like, how do you know it's going to help? Like,
Yeah.
how do you know it's going to actually make the value piece that you want it to if your only followers are your friends and your family? Now, not saying that what she made, I don't know what she made,
Right.
honestly, but the point is, like, that's exactly right. If you don't get that feedback while you're creating or even before you create, you're going to create something that you don't know people love.
Yeah. Yeah. You're launching into a vacuum and you're just trusting your gut, right? And
Yeah.
like, everyone knows that you can't always trust your gut. So
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So once you realized that that was the direction you wanted to go in, what was the next step? Was it hiring a team or, I mean, two developers? Marketing is so different, right? So what was the next step that you took in your journey?
my co-founder and we've worked together as sort of a two-person plus contractors team for a really long time. In fact, the
Mhm.
majority of the time, it was just the two of us kind of doing everything, right? So building the product, writing marketing copy, building landing pages, all of that stuff. And we would hack at different things. We were convinced that what we were doing was providing value for our customers because we would hear it from our customers, right? Like where they'd say, "Oh, well, I've never found a way." Like, I wish I had PickFu earlier because it gets me feedback from like 50 to 500 people in under an hour. That's amazing, right? Like, and that's stuff that they couldn't do before. So we were very motivated by all the positivity that we're helping with our customer base. But I think we always kind of spun our wheels on the marketing. What really ended up happening was that we started getting discovered and growing in these different verticals. So initially it was a self-publishing space, right? Self-publishing authors, where those situations where you can't really take something back after you launch it, right? Like if you're writing a book, you're coming up with the title. It's going to be hard to change that title after your publisher publishes or you self-publish, or the cover, right? Everyone, I mean, let's face it, everyone judges a book by its cover. So PickFu was discovered by self-publishers who used it to test their book titles and book covers and try to get some feedback before they launched so that they could have better launches. And that was great. And so we sort of built up a following in that community. We still weren't doing a lot of marketing. And then we started building up a following in the mobile gaming space, doing testing for app icons and screen store like marketing assets. But it was still hard to market. And so it was a challenge of us marketing to a given market. Like there are these verticals that were obviously getting benefit from it, but we weren't equipped ourselves and we were just trying to do all the marketing ourselves. What finally changed was that PickFu was discovered organically by the e-commerce industry. So people who sell online and particularly people who sell on Amazon. It turns out that if you run a quick PickFu poll to try to optimize your Amazon listing, the results correlate really well with real world performance. So PickFu became an easy way to optimize their businesses, like get more clicks on Amazon, get more sales. So we were directly improving their businesses. And once we saw that and it started taking off in that space, we realized, okay, well, we really need to go in on this, grow the team, grow the marketing team. Like we got to stop doing everything ourselves because there is this opportunity and we just can't do it ourselves.
So that's really interesting. And I wonder, because you were the ones that were using this product first,
Hmm.
it is, as entrepreneurs, we get in our heads, we see a vision, we go after it, of course. But when you're actually looking for feedback and you actually get feedback, sometimes you're like, oh no, they they don't know what they're talking about, or you just kind of ignore it. Have you seen this happen? And what advice do you have for actually taking that feedback as truth and putting it into action?
Well, I would say that feedback is not truth, but it's also not garbage, right? It's somewhere in
Mhm.
between. That one of the things that our platform does is that when you choose a target audience to, let's say, compare to logos for espresso podcast production or whatever, right? When you choose an audience, they get to both vote on the thing that they prefer the most in terms of answering your question, but also give you written feedback as to why they chose what they chose. So it's really those insights that really get you into the mind of your target customer or your target audience. So we've actually had a number of people who've come in and they've tested, let's say, two logo designs, and it comes back 50-50. And then they write in and they say, well, I would like a refund because half the group chose A and half the group chose B. And we would have to say, did you read? Like, if you just go and you read the comments, you'll see that people liked A for one reason, people liked B for another reason. That doesn't mean that there wasn't value. And that doesn't mean that, like, it's up to you. It's your judgment, right? All we're doing is providing a tool to let you gather that feedback and use that in your decision making process. That's like asking 100 people like whether they prefer cats or dogs. You're gonna have a lot of debates. You're gonna get very different opinions. That doesn't mean any one group is right. It might be dogs. That's personal. But like
Right.
but it really
I'm a
depends.
dog person.
Yeah, it really depends on, you read the responses and you take that into consideration when you're making those decisions. It's not about whether it's like the truth or not the truth.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure that feeds into a lot of confidence when people launch, especially
Yes.
if it is their first launch or they are nervous about it. They can get this feedback and be like, okay, like people like this for this reason. Like that's what I was going after. Have you
Yeah,
seen that?
absolutely. I think that's what our customers tell us the most is like we provide confidence for their decisions, right? Like PickFu is able to provide additional confidence for their decisions or evidence to turn away from one decision and reevaluate it. Like for example, if you're launching a business and you're trying to find like a domain name or some kind of name that's like unique, not in the standard English language or something, you could go and run a poll out there and try to get misconceptions about what that name means, because you might be fixated on this one name that you think means, it's exactly what you want it to mean, but you put it out there and other people might read it a different way and think, oh, that's like a bad connotation, like it's basically conveying the thing that you don't want it to convey. So sort of using feedback to test your marketing messages, your company names, sort of your value propositions, all of that is super valuable, especially when you're starting out.
100%. And you've been an entrepreneur for a long time now. And I'm curious if you have any advice that you would share to anyone newer in this industry, before they're even starting, like they might just have that entrepreneur itch that you
Mhm.
mentioned. Like when you were in that spot, what would you have told yourself? What advice would you give?
Two things. One, if you can, try to solve a problem that you have, because at least that's one data point about someone having a problem. And then as quickly as possible, talk to as many people as possible who also have that problem that you think that you're solving, right? Because
Mm,
the more people you're able to talk to who have a similar problem, let's say you don't even have that problem. Like the more people you can talk to who have the problem you think your solution is solving, the sooner you're able to calibrate the benefit you think you're going to provide versus what the market actually values. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And so then that avoids so many missteps along the way. Like you can learn that's like the easy way, right? The hard way is to spend all your time building something that nobody wants and then try to
Yeah.
launch it and then realize that nobody wants it. And then now you got to go back and like do all this rework and like so now you're trying to like maintain this thing that you built and you feel bad that you're changing it, and then you're getting feedback from your audience at the like after you've launched, and that's really rough.
Yeah, definitely. It's very like, one of the things I've heard a lot recently are, especially this year in entrepreneurship, since there are more people popping up with businesses left and right, like if you have an idea, you have to go after it. You can't sit on it for months and months and months. You have to like actually take action on it. And I'm sure you've heard this key phrase a lot of messy action. When you are an enterprise business, you can't really take messy action, but in the beginning, you absolutely can, smaller teams, people who are just, a team of one or a team of two or so, taking that fast action is so important. That's kind of what you just mentioned, like actually going after it. So, you mentioned you did this in a long weekend. Do you have any advice for anyone who needs to take action? Like they have that idea and they just need to like go for it?
Obviously everyone's like everybody's risk tolerance is different and everyone's situation is different,
Mhm.
right? We were fortunate in that we had some savings to go off of when we took this leap. We felt that we could, there was like a safety net of being able to find another job or so on. And obviously, like everybody's situation is different. I think tying it back to what you just said, I think taking fast and messy action is actually the best way to prove to yourself whether or not you should take the leap, right? Like you can do experiments in your off time. If you're doing something else right now, you can do experiments in your off time to validate, like, oh, is there an audience for this? Is there, are there can I find other people out there that have this problem that I'm trying to solve? Why don't I go talk to them? Like, none of that requires you to do something like quit your job cold turkey or whatever. But there's a lot of sort of messy action, messy side projects and experiments that you can take to sort of validate and prove to yourself, like, okay, this is worth it. I can go out there. I know approximately who my target audience is going to be. I've talked to them enough, understand their problems enough, that I'm pretty sure that I can provide value for them. Like, that's confidence, right? That's the confidence that you need to take the leap.
Totally. And when you were, just starting PickFu and were looking at, do other people have this problem? How did you find those people? And like, what did you ask them to get the right answers that you were looking for?
Yeah, so this is about building the solution, right? Like, we built
Mhm.
PickFu for ourselves. Like, we figured that we were, we knew that we needed to get out of our heads and ask other people and ask consumers what they wanted, because what we were building was something that faces consumers. And so we knew that this would absolutely solve our problem. We actually didn't know, like, we had a hunch that it could solve other people's problems, or that other people would have that problem. But honestly, that's kind of why we sat on it for so long, is that we built it for ourselves. We made it easy for us to use. It turns out that it was easy for other people to use. And once we started seeing other people using the product, and we realized, oh, well, this thing that helps us helps other people too. Then we started leaning into that and understanding, well, what are the problems that this product is actually solving for them? Like, for authors, what are the problems that this is solving? It's solving uncertainty about choosing a title and cover, and understanding what resonates with your audience, right? And so then once we discovered that, then we leaned into that, and we can update like the copy, the marketing, and the positioning of the product.
Yeah, so I saw a stat that just with a single image, you can increase your click through rate by 12%. I saw you send that over, and that is just crazy. It's like crazy that those small changes can make such a big difference. So let's say, for me, if I wanted to change my podcast logo from like one option to another, and I
Hmm.
came to you and I was like, okay, I want to run these two, what would that process be like?
Like, how does it work? Yeah. So we have the audience. We have the
Okay.
audience. We tap into a panel of over 10 million consumers in the US and 5 million internationally. And we're adding new countries as well. Those panels are consumer panels that are the same ones used by really, really big product companies like Procter and Gamble, like, or Kellogg. Like, when they're trying to decide, okay, well, we have a smash hit with Honey Nut Cheerios. What is the next flavor of Cheerios that we're going to launch? And what's the packaging and what's all that? They run focus groups. They run focus groups on these panels, but to run a focus group directly on these panels, you go through, like, they have a consumer insights team and all these consultants they have to work with. What we're doing at PickFu is shortcutting all of the middlemen to let you, Hayleigh, tap directly into those panels and run polls yourself against these consumer panels. So anyone can go onto PickFu, create a free account, and run a poll. Now, running a poll is really simple because it's a single question, and you can put up to 8 different options for your target audience to choose from and give feedback on. And we've built in the ability to do micro targeting. So if your target audience is like females, we have that. All the standard demographics: females, income, education, all that. And we've added micro targeting for all kinds of product niches. Like, if you're selling a dog product, you can target dog owners. If you're selling products for kids, you can target parents of kids. Selling for, you can target fish owners, horse owners, dog owners, cat, bird owners, people who play certain types of video games. We've basically built out a lot of targeting. So whoever your target audience is, you can target them and ask them directly about the stuff that you are working on, and even stuff that you haven't launched yet, right? So
Mhm.
if you're let's say we roll back the clock and you're trying to decide on your podcast production, like your company logo. If your designer comes back with 5 options, you can toss it onto PickFu, run a poll yourself, get feedback and written comments in less than half an hour. So now you can go throw it up there, and now you're making a decision with a lot more information, right?
Yeah, yeah. So logos, book covers, titles. What else are the common things that people like to test?
Yeah. So if you're selling anything online, testing that image and optimizing that image, like we've said before, a single test to optimize your image. If you choose a better image, we see those 12% click through rate increases all the time from
Mhm.
our users. Anything related to logos, your company name, website, you can test any image, text, audio, video. So
Ooh,
yeah.
okay.
If you wanted to test your podcast intro or outro, if you had a video ad you wanted to test, we see that. Basically, any kind of marketing collateral that you might need for your business, you can probably test it on PickFu.
That's really cool. That's really cool because I know, you can just ask your audience, like
You can.
your close network what they want, but it is amazing to see like a whole new group that you can get in front of, right?
Hmm.
Like instead of putting it on your Instagram story or your Facebook
Yeah.
group or whatever it is, like yes, those people will give you answers, but a lot of them might have been following you for a long time and are biased.
Exactly. No, and this is not to discount the value of building an audience first, right? Like
Yeah.
it's super important to have. If you can build an audience, you should absolutely build an audience. But the people who follow you and your audience are inherently biased because they've already bought in
Mhm.
to you, your vision, what you're communicating. So you should absolutely pull your own audience, and any social media platform will let you do polls and all of that stuff, right? So you should absolutely pull them, but you should
Yeah.
also get a second, or I guess in this case more than a second opinion
Yeah.
from the pool of people who don't know you yet, right? Because they're absolutely not biased to you. So if
Yeah.
you have an idea that, okay, I've built up this audience and it has these demographics and they're, female dog owners of a certain age range or whatever, and you think, okay, well, I can probably do something for this group of people, you should definitely pull them, but you should absolutely pull a similar audience that does not know you, that is unbiased, and like, you know, to see how they would respond to whatever it is that you're thinking of offering.
Absolutely. And this is making me think that I've been in business for about 4 years now
Mhm.
and have been building my audience since day 1.
Awesome.
And my offers have changed, here and there, but ultimately it's stayed the same. And in the next coming quarter, I'm rolling out this new offer that's more for like a higher enterprise type of
Right.
client who really wants to show up all over the internet with the help of their podcast. So it's a higher cost, higher touch offer that they're not following me, right? Like I have to
Mhm.
build that following. My following is podcasters who, they're successful, but they're not those big enterprise customers. So that's been in my head, like, how am I going to get this input without having them yet?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is awesome, and I'm sure there's other people who are ready to launch things, but still need that feedback because they don't have that following quite yet.
Exactly. And so PickFu is a nice way to know exactly what your target audience thinks about exactly the thing that you're working on right now. And that's very
Mhm.
different from sort of other approaches that are out there right now.
Yeah, yeah. So, since you just started this with one of your friends, I'm curious, as you've grown, you mentioned a team of 20 now.
Mhm.
How have your priorities shifted along the way?
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. I think growing a team and being able to delegate, and sort of have your role in the business change based on who you're
Mhm.
bringing in has been such an adjustment. And I mean, I think that there is absolutely value to taking messy action with small teams, right? Like you were talking about, and small teams can accomplish a lot. But there's definitely a benefit to scaling a team and being able to do a lot more than just what you can do with your two hands. And so as the team has grown, it's definitely been a lesson in sort of delegating and setting direction as opposed to getting our hands dirty ourselves. We try to operate with a lot of trust, and a lot of belief that, okay, well, if we're aligned on what we're trying to do as a company, then people should be able to work independently. And touching back on one of the things I mentioned earlier, my business partner and I have not been in the same place like ever while we've been building these businesses together. So we've always been remote. So when we decided to scale, we knew that we weren't going to get an office or move or anything. We each have families and so on. So we just leaned into remote. So we've been fully remote from the very, very beginning. All our employees are remote. I think we span 9 different time zones, where everyone's just online trying to work asynchronously and in a culture of high trust.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, after COVID, a lot of offices stopped, having people show up. And I've seen in Seattle a lot of people requiring them to come back in, Microsoft being one
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Amazon being another. And it just, I think that honestly, after I mean, I've worked from home for pretty much my whole career. I am way more productive here than
Yes.
in an office.
Yeah.
I need my time to relax and, do all of that, and that makes me work better. So that's great that you right off the bat were like, this is a remote company. I trust my workers. I trust, my employees, and everyone is going to do their job right.
Yeah, exactly. And it's definitely been an evolution and sort of, yeah, it's always a work in progress, right? But I think
Mhm.
every month and every year we're getting better at it, and I'm really proud of what we've built so far.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I'm excited to look more into your product, and I know a lot
Absolutely.
of people listening are probably thinking of those things that they need to test. Even if they've launched, I mean, I always say things in business can change, especially in the like first few years.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Your logos can change, your branding colors can change, and you can always adapt to where you're going in your business, right? Like the business I started with is not the business I have now. There's a lot of similarities, but things have adjusted along the way to better match. So I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about how they can, up level their branding and marketing and just messaging too.
Absolutely. I don't know if you've heard of this concept of one-way doors and two-way doors, but I think about
Mm,
that a lot. It's when you're thinking about a decision, most decisions fall into one of those categories, right? Is it a two-way door, which means you would make that decision? You can backtrack it, you can fix it, right? You make an offer, it doesn't work, you can change the offer. Very few decisions are one-way doors where like you go through that door, you can never come back, right? Even quitting your job is a two-way door because you can find
mm.
another job. And so once you realize that something is a two-way door, like you should just hurry up and make that decision because you know that you can walk it back if you need to. And that's kind of the fastest way to that messy action that really uncovers the opportunities for your business.
I love that. I've actually never heard that before. And that, I
It's a
like
nice
the
way of
vis
thinking about it, huh? Like,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
like, it's not permanent. It's
it's
not
not
gonna,
permanent.
like, ruin anything, right? You can
Yeah,
always backtrack, and yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I
yeah,
really
absolutely.
appreciate
Yeah.
that. So, where can people connect with you, John, and find PickFu and learn more about your business and yourself?
Sure. So anyone can register for a free account on PickFu, pickfu.com. And then to find me, I'm on LinkedIn. So just look up John Lee PickFu on LinkedIn and you can find me there.
Awesome. Where was PickFu? What does the name mean?
Yeah, great question. So honestly, when we were naming this thing that we had built, our requirements were 2 syllables, memorable, had the .com. We made a big
Mhm.
list. We whittled it down to a number of finalists, and then we pick food it. We put it through our system to try to get
Yeah.
pros and cons of all these different names that we were considering, and we went with PickFu. So PickFu is kind of like it's a play on like kung fu, or back then, we're like there was a term Google fu, which meant like the basically means that you're really good at something. Pick as in
Mm,
helping you choose. So it's kind of like mastery of choosing is kind of the
yeah.
intent. Obviously, there's different people pronounce it different ways. When I spell it, some people think I'm cursing at them. It is not intended, but it is memorable, and people generally tell us that they do like the name.
I like that. I like that. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And I ask every guest this, John. I would love it if you could wrap up this episode by sharing 3 action steps for the audience to take
Mhm.
based on what we talked about today.
Sure thing. So I would say action step number one is to know who your audience is, like figure out who your audience is. Action step number two, talk to them in some form or another. And then action step number three, just keep in mind that, the one-way door, two-way door thing. And like just try to take messy action because that's what's going to move your business forward.
Absolutely. Well, I will put everything in the show notes that you mentioned, and I cannot wait to hear what people think about your testing, the PickFu, and really see what results they get from it. So thank you
Absolutely.
again so
Yeah,
much.
thank you so much for having me, Hayleigh. It was great chatting with you.
Thank you for listening to the Employee to Boss podcast. If you made it to the end of this episode, I hope that you implement the actionable steps from this week's experts so you can get started with your business today. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the Employee to Boss podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. It helps more than you could ever imagine. Remember, a little progress each day leads to big results. We come out with a new episode every Tuesday. To access our show notes, transcripts, and courses, please check out espressopodcastproduction.com.